everybody, welcome into this Photoshop tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. This is my very first Photoshop tutorial that I'm recording in the year 2017. Everything's fresh, everything's new. I have to say, before we jump into this, I am going to make a concerted effort this year to kind of slow down my talking pace just a little bit. It's by far the biggest complaint that I get in the comments section, that I talk just too quickly. People can't keep up with it. Now, there are some people who enjoy how fast I move through these tutorials. For you, all I can say is there's a little gear icon down there in the play bar. You can 2x the speed. There's even some like Google Chrome extensions you can download where you can go 3, 4, 5 times as fast. Pretty amazing. It's actually how I watch most YouTube videos too. I like to speed things up. My mind goes a million miles an hour and 1,000 feet a second, and I just feel like I need to spit out as much information as I can, as quickly as I can. And that's where the talking fast comes from. I've done it for years and years and years. But for recording, I'm going to really make a concerted effort to kind of slow things down. So it's the first video of 2017. I'm so pumped. The first video I'm recording in 2017. I'm so pumped. We're going to take a look at 5 glitch effects in Photoshop. I think you're absolutely going to love it. And by the way, don't skip through this part of the video. By the way, if you don't want to do the tutorial, if my voice is too grating on your ears and you can't stand listening to me, there's a link down in the description to the video, and I'll also try to remember to throw a link up in the corner of the video. I have made each of these glitch effects, all 5 of them, into their own action. You can go to my website right now and download them for free. Punch your email address in. You're going to be signed up to my newsletter. It's our little trade-off. You sign up for my newsletter, you get these actions. You're going to love these actions. They work all over the place. It's so much fun just using them. One click, boom, you've got this cool glitch effect. You can try different glitch effects. You're absolutely going to love it. So without further ado, I've been talking too much already. Let's take a look at these glitch effects and then how to create them. So here's the first glitch effect we're going to create. This is sort of the channel-based glitch effect. Here's the second glitch effect we're going to create. This is kind of what I'm calling the smart object-based glitch. Then I've got this glitch effect, which is sort of the layer style-based glitch effect. And then I've got what I'm calling the noisy or the noise-based glitch effect. And then last but not least, I kind of have this color-based or retro-style glitch effect. We're going to cover all 5 of these in this video tutorial. Let's begin with glitch number 1. I'm going to jump over to my Finder and drag in a JPEG image, open it up in Photoshop. Yes, sir. Here's how this works. So what we need to do is we want to be working with a pixel-based image. You really don't want to convert this to a smart object. It's not going to allow us to do what we need to do with this if we do that. So here's what we need to do. We need to go up to our channels, and we need to select our red channel. From the red, or once we have the red channel selected, we want to go Filter, Distort, Wave. There's going to be a lot of this wave filter as we move through this video, as you're going to see. And you can see it gives us this horrific, just crazy looking effect. But the key is in how you use the wave filter. Number 1, we're almost always just going to use one generator, and we're going to use square as our type. Nextly, I'm going to change my scaling on the horizontal to maybe like 10 to 20. It usually works for this particular effect. And vertical, I'm setting it to 1. So not much movement on the vertical at all. Maybe I'll make a little bit more movement on the horizontal, maybe like 18. Then I'm going to change my wavelength to max out at about, let's go 600, 595. And the minimum wavelength will be somewhere between 200 and 300. You can really play with these as you begin to mess around with this effect. Then the amplitude we're going to increase as well, maybe to like max of 900 and a minimum of around 400. You can see this effect we're getting here. Hit randomize and really just mix up the effect. If the bars are a little bit too thin, what we can do is boost our wavelength here, right, and even move the minimum up so we're not getting stuff that's quite so thin. All right, and then hit randomize. It's really going to move things around. We can move the minimum in the amplitude department as well. Something like that. You can see the horizontal movement. See how there's kind of like this part of the windshield that's really shifted off to the left? That has to do with the scaling here. So the more we scale it, the more kind of out of whack it's going to be. So maybe a horizontal of like 14 works. And I'm going to hit randomize until I get an effect that looks kind of something like I want. That'll probably work for this photo. And for the undefined areas, we want to make sure we tick on repeat edge pixels. Go ahead and hit OK. Now, we're just applying this filter effect to the red channel. If we turn back the RGB composite channel, you can see we've got all this red ghosting, which is kind of cool in and of itself, but we're not done yet. Let's go down and select the green channel. Just hit Command and the number 4. Well, I already selected the green channel. I'm going to shut off the red and blue channel manually there. by clicking the eyeball icons. All right, green, we're going to go filter, hold down the Alt or Option key, and you can just click right here to open up the wave dialog box once more. And we're going to just leave those same effects or those same settings for this effect and just choose to randomize a little bit. Maybe what we'll do is make the size a touch larger. I'm going to move my amplitude back a little bit. Something like that. Make the max a little bit bigger. Something like so. Randomize, randomize. There we go. Something like that will probably work. Whatever. Hit OK. And there we go. So we've messed up the green channel. We've messed up the red channel, and if I turn the RGB composite channel back on, we have this really interesting, multicolored, funky-looking effect. It's a very destructive effect, by the way, because once you've applied these effects, you can't really go and undo them. I mean, you can undo them until you save and close your file and then open it up later. It's not like applying a smart filter or an adjustment layer or something like that. It is a rather destructive effect. But let's go ahead and just duplicate this background now by hitting Command or Control-J. We're going to right-click on it and choose to convert it to a smart object. I'm going to double click on the layer name and I'm going to name it lines. And then I'm going to make sure my foreground and background color are black and white. If they're not black and white, hit the letter D. It's going to reset your foreground and background color to the default of black and white. Go filter, filter gallery. And up here, we're going to choose sketch halftone pattern. And from halftone pattern, we're going to set the pattern type to line. You can see I already have it at line. And what I want to do is set my contrast down to like 0, basically. And the size, I don't know, let's try like 3. I want it to be much smaller. Yeah, 3 probably will work for this. Go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to set the blend mode here to lighten. Let's try lighten. Yeah, you can see it's going to really wash out the image and just give us these lines as though we're looking at an older television. Next up, let's throw a vibrance adjustment layer. It's a little inverted triangle here. And we're going to boost the overall vibrance to bring some of that color back and even boost the saturation a little bit. You want to be careful doing this. You can really make the effect super intense and kind of uncomfortable to look at if you really pump the colors too much. So just, keep that in mind as you're pumping the colors. And the next thing we're going to do is throw a levels adjustment layer in here. And we're going to do this and drag the output level of the black up and the output level of the white down. This is going to effectively kill off contrast. But I also want to boost the blacks a little bit by dragging the black input slider to 10, 11, 12, something like that. And next up, we're going to apply grain using one of my favorite techniques. And that is creating a new layer, naming it grain. Who would have guessed? And go edit, fill. And we're going to choose to fill this with the contents of 50% gray. Contents 50% gray. Hit OK. I'm going to collapse my properties panel. And then we're going to go filter, camera raw filter. Camera raw filter is really great at adding grain. Under the effects tab, we can just add a bunch of grain. Make it a little bit larger size. You can play with the roughness. Hit OK. And we're going to set this to a blend mode of soft light. And then at this point, we can leave it very grainy if we want it to look like there's a lot of static, or reduce the opacity a little bit, and we'll get rid of a little bit of that. So there is glitch effect number 1. This is the channel-based glitch effect. That's how you do that. Now, before we move along to glitch number 2, I want to let you guys know I'm selling a course over on tutvid.com all about retouching images. You're really going to like it. Use that link that just appeared up there. You can go over and pick up a copy for yourself. When you purchase a copy of this course, it helps support what we do here, helps me continue to crank out more and more and more tutorials. 2017, 2018, 2019. This is going to be huge years for the channel. A lot of exciting stuff is happening. Go ahead, use that link that appeared. It's probably gone by now, in fact. Pick up a copy for yourself to support the channel. If you don't want to pick up a copy, that's totally cool as well, because the advertisers are paying just to have you watch the video. So I'm happy either way. Let's get back to the tutorial. Let's move on and take a look at glitch effect number 2. I'm just going to close this document. At the end of this tutorial, we'll run through all the actions really quickly so you can see them at work. So I'm going to go over here and open up my second JPEG. We're going to open this with, you guessed it, Photoshop. Now, this particular technique is a little bit less destructive. In fact, we're going to have everything baked inside of these smart objects. So if we want to like swap this image with another image, we'll be able to do that, and the whole effect will just transfer to the new image. I'll show you exactly what I mean in a moment. Let's go ahead and right-click and just convert the background to a smart object right off the crack. And we're going to duplicate this layer, Command or Control-J, and then hide that layer. I'm going to select my visible layer here, and we're going to apply probably 2 wave filters to this, this smart object. So we're going to go Filter, distort, wave. I forgot for a split second there where wave was. And what's going to be key here, because we're sort of piling up distortion effects, we really don't want it to be extremely noticeable. Or I mean, it can be noticeable, but not extremely aggressive. So a scale of like 13, 14 on the horizontal is a little bit too much. It's going to just look muddled and bad at the end. So maybe like 6 on the horizontal will work. We can increase or decrease the amplitude here. Maybe I'll increase that a little bit just to kind of drag that out a little bit, and I'm going to change the wavelength a little bit here. And then I'm going to randomize. I'm just looking to have relatively thick distortion, but his eyes, I don't want like a slice going through his eyes that are cutting his eyes in half. So there we go. His eyes are in the middle of a slice, hit OK, and you'll see his eyes are still intact there. Great. Well, they're a little messed up, but they're pretty good, relatively speaking. Let's go back filter. We can hold down our Alt or Option key, and we're going to apply a second wave effect. We're going to randomize, randomize, randomize. Maybe what I'll do is make the waves... No, actually, let's go for much, much bigger waves here. So we're going to go with huge ones. Maybe a little less on the horizontal distortion. Something like that. Hit OK. You're going to see we've got this double wave effect. If I hit this little drop-down arrow, we can see definitely 2 wave filters applied. And now I want to place a document here, a texture actually, on top of this. I've got a great texture. I've got it linked down in the description to this video from Brush Easy. It's a pack of textures. I'm going to go File, Place Embedded. I just want to just embed it right in place. And I believe I still have it here in my downloads, actually. Yeah, here we go. And I'm going to go with texture number 10. They're these very dark textures. I'm going to hit the word place here. You can see there it is. I'm going to drag this out and make it a little bit larger than my existing document. Hit the check icon to commit that change. And what I'm going to do here is set this to the blend mode of screen. And you can see it drops away the black and just throws this texture over the image. I can reduce the opacity a little if I want. I'm looking at this. This second wave texture is kind of splitting his eye a little bit in a way that I really don't like. I'm going to hit OK here. There we go. Kind of brought his eyes back around a little bit. All right, let's go back to our texture here. We can name the layer if we like. Just name it texture or something. And now let's select our duplicated smart object and turn that back on. And I'm going to double click and I'm going to name this layer lines. So we're going to apply some lines to this like we did to the other image. Make sure your foreground and background color are black and white. Let's go filter, filter gallery, and it's going to have us right there in sketch. Halftone pattern. Pattern type is line. Great. We're going to go with a very narrow line here. Maybe 1. Let's go 2, actually. We'll go 2. Contrast to still 0. Hit OK. And now we're going to apply a wave effect to these lines. So let's go filter, distort, wave. And we're going to look to add a pretty thick wave effect to these lines. And we can have some decent movement here. So let's go randomize, randomize, randomize. I'm going to change the amplitude here a little bit. Stretch things out, randomize. Yeah, something like that's probably good. Hit OK. Just going to kind of chop our lines up a little bit. Don't worry. I know you're only seeing the lines, not our underlying layer right now. Don't worry about that, though. We'll change that in just a moment. And now what we're going to do is select the half black, half white circle right down here. That is this guy right here. Go ahead and select that and choose a solid color adjustment layer. And I'm going to use like a very hot pink that's almost fading into a red. So like a reddish pinkish color. And I'm going to set it to the blend mode of either darken or overlay, depending on what looks better. Darken looks pretty cool. Overlay maybe looks a little bit too crazy. Let's just stick with darken for now. I kind of like that. We can always reduce the opacity a little if it's too crazy. And then what we're going to do is group this color fill and our lines layer here by holding down Shift, selecting both layers, hit Command or Control G to group them, and I'm going to call this Colored Effect 01 because we can duplicate this if we want. And we're going to set the entire layer blend mode, the entire layer group, excuse me, to the blend mode of, let's try Lighten. And what we're getting here is this very subtle red edge that's being applied to everything. You can try different blend modes if you want. Overlay, that's kind of, too much. Screen is a little bit too crazy as well. I've just found that darken and lighten are really helpful blend modes when you're working with color in this way. So I'm gonna roll with lighten here, and we're gonna go ahead and duplicate this entire layer group by dragging and dropping it on the new layer icon. And what I'm going to do is open up this group, and I'll rename it. I'll name it Color Effect 2, and we can give this another color. So we can go with a blue or a green, something like that. Green tends to be a little bit more noticeable, especially when contrasted against the red. But you can always go with the blue as well. So I think I'm gonna roll with the green here. Maybe make it a little bit darker. No, maybe a little bit brighter, more saturated, something like that. Hit OK. And then here with the Lines Smart Object, we're just going to double click and adjust our wave filter that's been applied to this and extend the horizontal effect a bit and maybe randomize it a little more. Go ahead and hit OK. And now you can see that we're getting both some of the red and the green effects. So I'm just going to collapse that layer group. And at this point, you can go ahead and do whatever you want. You can add some grain if you like. You can throw a channel mixer onto this and really bring out the reds and the greens from their respective channels. You could even clip this to a specific entire group of layers to just bring out the colors in those layers. You can see it's a very subtle little change there, but a change for sure. It's a very interesting way to create this glitch effect doing this. And one of the cool things about it is you can always select one of the smart objects. Remember, we have that smart object 2 times over in both of these layer groups, and it has all these filters applied to it in both instances. But what we can do is we can select it down here, right-click on the layer, and choose Replace Contents, and just choose, I don't know, let me just go to my downloads. I've got this photo of this girl here. Let's just double-click on her to bring her in. We can bring her in, and you're going to see that everything just updates to her. You can see she is in both of these layers now because these smart objects are duplicates of this smart object instance. They're not new smart objects. They're just copies of this smart object. So if we replace the contents of this smart object, both of those get changed out as well. I don't like this image for that effect quite as much, so I'm going to flip back to the dude we were using. But that is how you create a smart object-based glitch. Now let's talk about creating the blending mode-based glitch. So I'm going to jump over here to my Finder. I'm going to right-click on the third image here. I'm going to open this guy with Photoshop as well. All right, so we've got her here in Photoshop, and the first thing we want to do is right-click and convert this layer to a smart object, and then duplicate the layer twice. Command or Control J. Command or Control J. We're going to name the first duplicate by double-clicking on the layer and name it R, and then the second layer we're going to name G/B, and the bottom layer we'll just name Base or something like that, just so it doesn't feel left out. So let's shut off the visibility for the R layer for a quick second and go to the G layer, and I'm going to go Layer, Layer Style, Blending Options. And here in Blending Options, I'm just going to shut off the red channel. Doesn't look like anything's changed. Don't worry. Hit OK. And what we want to do is free transform this by hitting Command or Control T. And then up here in the control bar, you've got this little selection area. You can select an anchor point. We want the middle left anchor point. And then we're going to set the width to probably 101, maybe 102. Let's go 102. Go ahead and check that. You can see we're getting this heavy reddish-greenish edge on her. Great. Let's go ahead and, well, you know what? This is a smart object. Let's apply just a subtle wave filter to this as well. So we're going to hold down our Alt-Option key, select Wave, and this is way, way too much. So we want to go way down with the scale, maybe like 3 or 4. You can leave everything else kind of as it is. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK, and you're going to see it's going to give me just a nice cut-up effect. We're not damaging her eyes, kind of, sort of important. You can double-click on the layer out here to open up the blending options, and in this case, this layer is R, so the only thing I'm going to save is my R channel. I'm going to shut off G and B. And there we go. We're going to hit OK. And we're also going to free transform this layer as well. So we're going to hit Command or Control T to free transform this. In this case, we're going to set the anchor on the middle right area, and we're going to extend the width maybe like 101 this way. So we're barely making it, just you can see it's a tiny bit wider. Go ahead and just apply this change. Great. So there's the red. Let me just double click on this layer here. Yeah, we shut red off there, and we left red on in this channel. I'm just making sure I'm not getting myself mixed up. And the last thing we want to do is also apply a little bit of a wave filter to this layer. So let's go Filter, Distort, Wave. And this one, I'm going to make my wavelength a bit thinner, a bit narrower. So I'm going to go ahead and just move it around a little bit, maybe accentuate a little bit more, horizontal like 5 maybe. Go ahead and hit OK. It's going to apply that filter. Great. And now we're going to select our base layer, hold down the Alt or Option key, and just drag it up to the top. This is going to duplicate our original layer. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to name this also Lines, because we're going to do that whole filter gallery, stylize, halftone pattern, pattern type line. But I think in this case, we're going to get some larger lines. Let's go for like 10 in the size department, that is. Contrast, we'll still leave that at 0. I think we'll leave that at 0. Yeah, 0 in the contrast will work fine. Hit OK. And what I want to do here with the lines is I want to set it to a blend mode of soft light right off the bat. This is going to increase a lot of contrast, as you're seeing there. One of the ways that we're going to combat that is by going back into our blending options. So go ahead and just double click on the layer out here, and we're going to split the blend if slider for the underlying layer. So we're going to hold down our Alt or Option key and click on the black slider and just drag it all the way over to like 140, 150, something like that. You can see how that's really helped just alleviate some of our contrast issues, and we can also reduce the overall layer opacity to like 50 or 60% on the opacity slider here. That opacity slider, by the way, same exact opacity slider as you have out here in your layers panel. And at this point, we can go ahead, we'll throw a channel mixer onto this. I'm working in the green output channel here. I'm going to boost the constant, maybe 2 or 3%, maybe like 2%. I'm going to go to the red. I'm going to boost the red to like 110% and also boost the constant 2 or 3 as well. So we're just enriching the reds and greens, giving us a little bit of like a somewhat washed out orange look. And we're also going to use a color lookup table. So that's the color lookup adjustment layer right here. These are really cool. With the color lookup, we have all these 3D LUTs we can load, and there's a bunch of presets here in Photoshop that maybe you've never even known about. I want to go with the futuristic bleak. There it is, .3DL. And you're going to see it's going to give me this washed out, just really neat look. And I'm going to set the layer opacity here to 50%. I've got the move tool selected, so I can just hit the number 5. It's going to set that layer to the opacity of 50. And we're going to do that same camera raw grain trick by adding a new layer, naming it grain, and going edit. Fill, 50% gray, great, filter, camera raw filter, the effects tab, right? We got this down pat. Amount, I'm going to go amount 100, size 100, roughness 100, everything 100. Hit OK. We're going to set this to soft light, and you can see how we just get this beautiful, like fuzzy television type grain. I love it so much. Just a quick pause here before we head on to the fourth way that we create these glitches in Photoshop. Make sure you subscribe to my email newsletter. I was just pointing to the link that appeared up there. You can go ahead and use that link. Sign up for the newsletter. When you sign up, you get a free tutorial, 30 ways to improve your speed and working faster in Photoshop. You're really, really going to love that free download that comes with signing up for the newsletter. And you're going to get all kinds of awesome emails from me. Awesome non-spammy emails, I should say. Let's get back to the video. Now let's go ahead and move along to the fourth glitch effect that we're going to talk about. I'm going to jump back out to my Finder, grab another JPEG, open it with, you guessed it, Photoshop, because that's where we're working. And now we're going to create a noise-based glitch filter effect. This one is really neat to do. We're going to go ahead and create a blank layer here. This is going to be sort of a junk throwaway layer. We're going to grab the gradient tool here. You can see I've got this very bizarre gradient up here. Go ahead and select your gradient editor. Under the gradient editor, you can choose gradient type. Normally, you work with a solid gradient, but in this case, we want the noise gradient. Now, I'm just staggering my blue, green, and red color sliders here because I find it renders a better effect for what we're doing. And then just choose the randomize button a bunch of times to mix things up and get a gradient that looks like it has a lot of lights and a lot of darks. Go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to drag from the bottom, hold down my Shift key, drag straight up to the top of my document, and place this horrifying looking gradient. What I'm going to do now is go Image Adjustments, Desaturate. We've got a black and white gradient now. Next up, Image Adjustments, Levels. And I'm going to drag the black slider over quite a bit and the white slider over quite a bit because we're looking to create a totally randomized series of white stripes shooting horizontally across a black background. Once you've got this, go ahead and hit OK. And what we now need to do is select the color white with our color range tool by going Select Color Range. And I'm just going to tell color range to select the highlights and leave fuzziness somewhere around 20, 25. Well, you know what? Actually, maybe I'll need to bump it up a little bit here. Let's go like 70, maybe something like that. Reduce the range a little bit, or increase the range, really. We're moving back into the darks a little bit more. A range around 125. This is all going to depend on your image. Just watch your sort of preview here. Hit OK. You can see we've got all this stuff selected. That's perfect. We can now go Select, and we're going to choose to save this selection. We're saving it as a new channel, and we're just going to name this 01 or something. You can name it whatever you want. I'm going to just go ahead and hit OK. And over here in the Channels panel, there's 01. Great. Now we need to deselect by going Select, Deselect, and I'm going to delete this layer just with the delete key or the backspace key. I'm going to create another new layer. We need to repeat the whole process. Let's get a different gradient. All right, there we go. Randomize a couple times. Hit OK. I'm going to drag it from the top down, holding Shift. You can drag it from the bottom up, top down. Doesn't matter. The hotkey to desaturate is Command-Shift or Control-Shift-U, and the hotkey for opening up levels is Command-L or Control-L. I'm going to drag the black slider over. I'm going to drag the white slider over. Black slider over, white slider over, really bring in a lot of whites. Go ahead and hit OK. And what I'm going to do now is go ahead and choose Select, color range, once again, I'm selecting my highlights. I can increase my range here or decrease it a little bit. Go ahead and hit OK. And once more, what I'm going to do is go select, save selection, and I'm going to save this as O2. Again, a new channel. Go ahead and hit OK. Command or Control D to deselect. Drag this layer down to the garbage. All right, so we now have 2 channel-based selections that we're going to be working with to start this effect. We're going to convert our background image to a smart object by right-clicking and choosing Convert to Smart Object, and we're going to duplicate it 1, 2, 3 times. I'm going to name the top layer Lines. You probably know what that's for. I'm going to name the middle layer R. Probably maybe even know what that's for. And the bottom layer B. And the very bottom layer we can just name Base once more. I'm going to hide these layers, and I'm going to apply a mild waves filter to the base layer. So Filter, Distort, Wave. And we really want it to be mild. The beauty of this particular effect is in its sort of sublime yet subtle nature, really sublime and subtle nature. So I'm going to go with the scale of 4 on the horizontal and just stick with 1 on the vertical. And I'm going to increase my amplitude just a little bit here on the max end of things. And I'm watching here this tall tower. I can really get a feel for how crazy this effect is going to be. There we go. Nice and subtle. All right, so it's not ripping everything to shreds, but it's still doing, some damage. Let's work with our R layer first. I'm going to drag it down here. And what I need to do is go to my channels now, or I can actually just go select Load Selection, and I can load the O1 channel. That's our first series of horizontal lines, right? And I'm going to mask this R layer within just these lines. Doesn't make a lot of sense now, but it will in a moment. We're going to go Layer, Layer Mask, Reveal Selection. Now you can't see anything or much of anything because, well, you can see there's our original image and now we just have these other additional lines, squigglies added to it. We want to hit the little chain icon here to unlink the contents of the layer from the layer mask. And make sure you have the layer selected. You see the little white outline that appears around it? We're working on the layer. We want to go ahead and upscale this layer by hitting Command or Control T, and we're going to set the width and height to 103%. So there's width, and here's height, 103. We're just making it a little bit bigger. Go ahead and check to commit that change. You can see there's before, there's after. We're doing this kind of crazy effect. And we're going to double-click out here, and we're going to just leave the reds turned on in here. So we're getting just a little, red flicker. That's really cool. And what I now want to do, this is where it kind of gets really neat, is we go Filter, Noise, Add Noise. And we want to add noise to this layer, Gaussian noise, and don't turn on monochromatic. I want it to be colorful noise. If I add a lot of noise, you can see I get this really pronounced effect. I don't want it to be quite so pronounced. I want it to be, kind of in between super pronounced and super duper subtle, something kind of like that. So about 45% for this layer. This is going to depend on your image and the sort of random selection that you got with that gradient. So you're going to have to adjust that gradient probably the noise amount for every image that you work on. Let's turn on our B layer here. And in this case, we're going to go select Load Selection. We will select the second channel we created. Okay, great. We're going to go Layer once more, Layer Mask, Reveal Selection. Great. Unlink that layer once more. Select the contents of this layer, and what we're going to do here is we're going to transform this layer by hitting Command or Control T. We're not going to upscale it. We're simply going to drag it out to the right here. So just drag it out a little bit, maybe like 101, 102-ish percent. I'll do this manually. Let's go 101. That looks pretty intense there. I'm going to nudge this back. You can see it kind of moved off of the edge of my photo over here. We really want to make sure we're anchored in there. Great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit the check icon to commit that change. In this case, we'll double click and we want to shut off all of the channels except the B channel. So now we're going to get kind of this purple and green effect introduced. Really, really cool. Go ahead and hit OK, and we're going to once more add some noise. So I can just hold down my Alt or Option key and hit Add Noise. And again, I just want to add noise kind of to taste. So too much noise, you can see it goes really, really crazy. But just the right amount of noise, just kind of says, hey, I'm here, but I'm not in your face. So about 20% looks like it's going to work well for us. In this instance, go ahead and hit OK. Now we'll come up to the lines layer, turn that on. Our foreground and background color, we really want to make sure they're black and white. We're going to go Filter, Filter Gallery. You're probably used to this at this point, right? Halftone pattern. Here we're going to reduce the size to probably about 6, something that's sort of medium sized. And we're going to bump the contrast to, let's try 10. We're looking to get a little bit more white kind of in between there. Hit OK. And we're going to set the layer blend mode here to screen. Now, it really, really washes out the image, kind of, sort of, way too much. we're going to reduce the opacity to something like 20%, maybe a little over 20%. You can see there's before and there's after. So we get the really neat, like a little bit of line effect, a little bit of this washed out effect. It just works together really nicely. Let's throw a hue saturation adjustment layer on top of this. That's hue saturation right there. We're going to go to the reds channel, pump the red saturation a little bit, plus 28 looks good. Let's also pump the yellow saturation a little bit. Something right there between 20 and 25 also looks pretty good. We're going to throw a curves adjustment layer on here. We're going to kill off contrast with curves by dragging up on the black point here and dragging down on the white point. You can see it's really just wiping out the contrast and lifting the blacks. It's kind of a neat effect, but we immediately want to counteract it with another color lookup table. And we're going to go with, let's try crisp warm. That's pretty cool. That actually looks really nice. I really like what it does to the tones, and it even works well with the red and the blue noise that's showing up in there. Looks really neat. Let's reduce the opacity of this to maybe like 45, 50%, something like that. Looks pretty good. And at this point, we can just go ahead and throw more grain on it. I would probably use more of that camera raw grain to spare us going through all of that again. I'm going to come to this image, select the grain layer, grab my move tool, drag it right over, and drop it in place. And you can see, there we go. We've got some grain in place before and after. And it's just a really neat effect. This is probably one of my favorite of these 5 glitches. Number 4. Really dig it. So that leaves us with just the last one, number 5. Once more, I'm going to jump out to the Finder. I'm going to grab image number 5, and I'm going to open it here in Photoshop. And let's take a look at the sort of retro glitch effect, the color-based glitch effect. Now, I'm going to duplicate my background layer 3 times. Command or Control J, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to name the top layer magenta. I'm going to name the, oh, you know what? Actually, that should be the middle layer. I'm going to name the top layer yellow, because we're going to split this up to cyan, magenta, yellow. So we've got cyan, magenta, yellow, and we've got our background layer. I'm going to shut those 3 layers off real quick. I'm going to drop a black and white adjustment layer here, just a black and white, my background layer. I can always reduce the opacity of this if I just want to wash out some of the color. Maybe we want to do that. Kind of interesting. Like 65% opacity looks pretty cool. Let's turn on the cyan layer. Now, I haven't converted this to a smart object because I want to apply levels directly to this layer by hitting Command or Control L. And I'm going to go to the red channel here, and I'm going to drag the white output slider from the right-hand side all the way to the left. Gives me this heavy cyan tone. Hit OK. Now watch what it does here when we do it in the green channel. So I'm going to select the magenta layer, Command or Control L. Magenta, by the way, the opposite of green. We're going to grab that white output slider, drag it all the way to the left. You can see heavy magenta cast. Let's turn on the yellow layer, hit Command or Control L, go down to the blue channel because, of course, yellow is the opposite of blue. Grab that white output slider, drag it way over to the left, and we've got a heavy yellow cast. We want to set this yellow layer to the blend mode of screen. So we're going to set that to screen. Actually, you know what? Let's not go screen first. Let's apply some wave effects to these. So let's convert each of these to a smart object at this point. Right-click, convert to smart object. Same thing with magenta, convert to smart object. Right-click cyan, convert to smart object. I'm going to shut off my 2 top layers. Here under cyan, we're going to go filter, distort. You guessed it, wave. We've done it 100 times already today. I'm going to set my horizontal to like 7 or 8, something like that. We can kind of mess him up a little bit. Go ahead and hit OK. All right, we got them all chopped in horizontal pieces. Let's go with a magenta here. Oh, I'm on the magenta layer. I'm going to go filter, hold down my Alt-Option key to open the wave dialog box once more. I'm going to go with larger slices here. Randomize it a click or 2. There we go. We got some nice big chops. Oh, you know what? That's probably not quite noticeable enough for my taste. So let's increase this a bit. Go random. There we go, something like that. Hit OK. And there we go. We got it chopped up nicely. And now we're going to go with yellow. And again, filter, hold down the Alt-Option key, open that wave dialog box once more. Randomize this a couple times. Yeah, something like that looks good. Hit OK. And you can see we just have 3 different wave effects here. In fact, I want to mix up this wave effect a little bit. I'm going to increase the amplitude here a bit. Hit OK. It's just going to really exaggerate those slices even more. And after I do that, I'm just going to collapse that little flyout area. And now, so I can actually see what's going on, let's set the blend mode to screen. And then for magenta, that already looks pretty cool. But for magenta, we're also going to set it to screen. And then for cyan, to kind of darken things up, we'll go like multiply or maybe just straight up darken. I actually kind of like darken because it keeps things, ironically, a little bit lighter. And then here you can see before and after our black and white adjustment. We're just taking some of like the color out of the yellow wall. Maybe I'll even pump this up a little bit more. Yeah, somewhere around like 75, 80. Opacity looks a little bit better. We really want this to look like a washed out image. Let's go up, select the yellow layer here, and we're going to add a levels adjustment layer here above this. By going levels, we'll increase the blacks just a little bit, and we'll also fade them a touch. So increase and fade, and then we're going to dim down the white just a little bit. All right, kill off some of the whites going on, especially up in the highlights. It's a little bit too intense. And once more, we'll go color lookup tables. And I think here I want to go, let's try edgy amber. See how it's like this really crazy sepia type effect? And I'm going to set it to the blend mode of multiply and then just reduce the opacity to, I don't know, 45, 50. In fact, if we go 50, we might not even need, we don't even need that levels adjustment. Let's get rid of that. I can just increase the opacity to like 65 and get a really, really cool effect with that. And then again, at this point, all you need to do is drag some grain in. So I'm going to drag the grain in from this image. There we go. We've got our grain. I'm going to crank the grain up a little bit for this shot. And that's going to be it. We've created 5 different glitch effects. I know I promised you that I'd preview all the actions, but I kind of think I've previewed all the actions, right? Because we went through them. I don't really want to waste your time going over actions that are going to create exactly what we just went over in detail, creating one by one by one by one by one. So there you have it. We've created 5 different glitch effects in Photoshop. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. It's @tutvid. There's a link down in the description to this video. If you use these effects on photos and you love them, post them on Instagram, tag me. I'll see it. I'd love to see what you create. I'll try to get in and like the images and comment on them and let you know what I think about them. And obviously, even if you didn't follow the tutorial, you can still download the free actions and apply them, and I'd still love to see them. If you've enjoyed the video, please make sure you go ahead and leave a like on this video. Also, make sure you subscribe to my channel. You'll never miss another video in the future. Drop a comment below. Let me know what you liked about the tutorial and how you enjoyed it, or if you didn't really enjoy it. I would love to hear. So, for creating 5 individual glitch effects in Photoshop and the free action pack of glitches that comes along with it, that's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.